Hi, so my name is Prem Asim Jain, and today we are going to continue with our assignment in this session, which is library management. So far, what we have done is we have an interactive client file, and we ask user to continue program or to exit it. Then we have created the initializer class and the library manager class and a domain object which is called as the student. So student is the domain object. So we'll go simple first, and then we can do some refactoring. So now what has happened over here is once we start our system, the initializer component initializes some of the data inside it, and then whatever data has been loaded, that is retrieved from the client or data related to the student. And the class which is holding the variables is the library class. So now we will try to add the capability of adding the student on the fly, which means the student which were already created in the system, we are not retrieving that. However, we will try to create them. So for doing that, we might need some user input, and then based on that, we can create the user and add it. So how this would happen is this is super simple. We'll just ask few question. Rather, we'll just keep it simple and we'll just ask for the name. So our option was ready. If user wants to do a login, then he is supposed to put 0, right? So we just have to make sure that we are not clashing. Repeat flag is 1 and any other flag will exit once you come here. 1 is to retrieve student, and then 0 is to it's a menu based program though, so 0 is to add a student. So here we can say welcome to the register screen. This is command line, and later on if we have to connect it through any UI, we will have some kind of similar option, but the APIs which would get called would be similar what we are generating here, since we are going step by step, right? So it's terminal interface, basically terminal or console interface. So now we will ask user with the enter the name of student, and then we will try to enter. So here we need to use the scan, and then we need to put it in a variable. So we can put a variable student name, and this would be scan dot next. Scan dot. So there are multiple ways of doing this. We can do next, or we can do next line, or we can do other stuff. Basically, it depends. So what we are going to do is we are going to do next, and then whatever he enters, that we are going to capture as the student name. And once we get the student name, we are going to add it in the system. So to add, we have a component. Now we will understand about how component architecture or component design works. So there are two ways. One is you can just, what it needs to make a student is basically you have to have a student, and then you have to have a ID, and then you have to have a name. Now ID we would like to assign, get assigned by the system. Fine. So what we need to do is we will create a constructor which will just take the name, and ID would be the uh, index of the ID could be the index of the list. So we won't take the ID. So we should be able to create the student just by passing the name. And once a student is created, based on the list item, whatever is the maximum, whatever is the index, we will just put it as the ID. So we'll just quickly learn that. So now we will have the student name, which is totally fine, and then we will have the student. So there could be a better way of doing this instead of calling new object. Now, what I was telling before is responsibility of a class. So this class's main responsibility is to interact with the user and not to create or write the logic which is creating the objects. So what we are going to do is we will outsource the creation part of the object inside the library manager class. And what we'll do here is we will say it as add student. So this is the code which we got from there, but then we will say as we are going to have a method which is going to return student, and we will say register student, and this will return student, and this class will take a parameter student name. This will create it here. Then student also needs the ID. So what we are going to do is, since we have a zero base index, so if there are three items in the list, 0, 1, 2, so third element would be the ID for the student. So we will do student dot set student ID, and name of the ID would be student list dot size. I think this should be simple to understand. So we wanted the name and the ID. ID, whatever is the index. So maximum student, whatever would be there, we'll just put it. And once we register the student, we will add the student to the list as well. So there are two ways. Now we can add same thing once we register it in this list itself. So in next loop or whenever someone wants to retrieve that student, he should be able to retrieve it without any problems, right? That would be the student ID. So, so we can either make it part of this, or technically we can make another method which is called as add student, register student, and then we have another method which is add student. So if you pass any student from anywhere, technically that should get added to this guy. So we have to add a student, and this is going to return nothing, and this already has the object reference of this list, and we are going to add the student here. So there are two options here. First option is you can add the student based on the whatever ID it has, right? So you can add that student at a particular index. So that's what we are going to try. We will add it in the student dot get student ID, and then we will say student. So once I'll run this, let's not do too many things at one time. I'll just run this and we'll make sure that we are able to register the student, add the student, and then retrieve the student. So this is how this will get connected. Now if there is any error, we will be sure that student is getting created but student is not getting added because there is problem in this method. So this method has its own responsibility. Even though it's a one line method, this method has its other set of responsibility, and class has other set of responsibility. So now let's try to call this in the client. So this is called a separation of concern, that you are not trying to mix things in one. However, you are just trying and make the responsibility of a class, of a method, and trying to divide it everywhere. So you have got the student name, and then you have register student method. Now if you need to call it, you need to have the library manager object reference. On that you will call this. Okay, we need to make it public. Now we will have student name. So this will add it here. So once this one is added, then let's try and see and debug it. So we are going to run our app, and what we are trying to do is, do you have the student ID? No, I do not have it. Press 0. Welcome to the register screen. Enter the name of the student. Scene. Do you want to rerun the program? Yes, I want to rerun the program. Now here is a catch. I need to, let's say 3. Invalid entry. So let me press 1, 2. Invalid entry. Press 1, press 1. Okay. So I think let's try to debug. Okay, Spurti has been student retrieved is student ID 1 and name is Spurti. Do you want to rerun the program? Yes. Do you have the student ID? Yes. Do you want to retrieve the student? Number 3. So number 3 is Bradish. 1, 1, 4. Great. So our program worked awesome. We just added one student and we are able to retrieve it. So this is dynamism. Now we can try to add as many as students we want, and this program will run in a robust pattern. So we will say I want to rerun the program, and I want to register another student, and name of the student is James Bond. And so there is one lacking. I'll just tell you what is that. I want to rerun the program. I have the student ID, and the student ID would be 5. Then we were able to retrieve the answer. But as soon as we register, we don't know what's the student ID for the guy. So let us try and communicate it to the user. That's a good programming practice, to have proper communication channel between the system and the user. So how to do the communication is, once the registration happens successfully, you can or you should uh, convey this message to the user by saying student registered successfully, and then you can say his ID and name or student details. So I believe we have the student detail. Now here the problem is, how would you get the access of student name and ID over here? So you might need to extract the student from this guy so that you have the object reference over here. We will try to do that. What we can do is, yeah, even this is fine. Cool. So successfully, and we will do a south. So I'm not typing system.out.println, I'm just printing south, and I have autocomplete. So that's another trick to be efficient while doing this programming. Let me close all tabs, disconnect, disconnect, cancel, stop, run it. Do you have student ID? Yes, I have. If I'll do 5 now, I might end up having errors, and that's what we expected. Why? Because we are using some ID which does not exist anymore. So what's a good practice is to catch these exceptions so they are not thrown, and it's not abruptly shown it to the end user. So in our next video, we are going to learn about try catch. We will try to suppress these errors, and we will catch them and send a meaningful message to the end user.